Neville Longbottom got out of bed and walked to the dormitory window. He opened the window and sat down on the bed. It was 5 in the morning. It was still dark outside and raindrops were hitting the windows. He sighed and looked at his sleeping friends. Ron was snoring. He stood up and began to dress quietly. He needed to get some fresh air. He felt sick and dizzy. He went down to the common room and looked at his watch again. It was 6:15. It's too early to leave Gryffindor headquarters without risking detention. The teachers and Filch night patrols finished their work at 7. He sat in an armchair and looked at the remains glowing in the fireplace. To go out or not to go out, he thought. I have always followed the regulations. Well, maybe almost always. And how did I benefit from it? Neville rubbed his hand over his chin and said aloud, Exactly. How? No how. I'm an average student who doesn't get into any trouble. If a teacher catches me, I will just say I'm going to the hospital wing. After all, I have been feeling bad for several days. He stood up and put on the jacket he had left on the hanger in the corner of the common room yesterday. Then he sat down and thought, what if Snape catches me? He felt chills. He will definitely ground me and won't want to hear about the hospital wing. Neville sat there for a while. Then decided to leave and went through the portrait hall. His need for a refreshing walk was stronger than his fear of Snape. The fat lady was still sleeping. To avoid waking her, he tiptoed the first few dozen steps. His fear was unnecessary. He quickly reached the gate of the building, pushed it open and left the lock. The weather was even more terrible than he had imagined in the dormitory. The rain was hitting his face and the wind was ruffling the clothes. Still, he went ahead. Nice. This was the first time he willingly broke the school rules without any reason, just a simple breath of fresh air. But after a while, he shuddered. He had to leave. Otherwise, he would go crazy in the dormitory. Lately, he feels like an intruder there, someone who doesn't fit in with the rest. He put on the hood of his robe and went towards the lake. The soggy ground beneath his feet began to crumble and water began to pour into his shoes. A stream of water flowed along the path he was walking. He finally reached the lake and stood under one of the trees. Figuring this would make him less wet from the rain, he looked at the water's surface, which was rippling with drops and gouts of wine. Despite the difficult conditions he was in, he felt better. Fresh air and a little water in shoes never hurt anyone. The robe was waterproof, however, thanks to the fact that in their last lesson with Professor Flitwick, they had learned to cast a spell that made clothes repel raindrops. It was actually Hermione who had helped him cast the spell on his clothes, for which he was now grateful. He decided to try to use this spell again. He took out his wand and waved it at the shoes, muttering the spell text under his breath. It did not work. Water kept pouring into his shoes. He repeated the spell, but again nothing happened. Tears came to Neville's eyes. Here we go again. Even the simplest spells were difficult for him. What's wrong with him? He kicked angrily at the nearby stone, which then fell into the water. Why am I so hopeless? He asked loudly, hoping someone would answer. Why is even the simplest spell beyond me? Neville? He heard a voice behind him. What you doing here? Hagrid was walking towards the lake, but when he saw Neville, he headed towards him. Under his arm, he carried a bag from which a strange liquid was leaking. It didn't smell very nice either. Hello, Hagrid. I'm just staying, and you? What are you doing here? I'm gonna to the lake. I have to feed the giant squid, he said, pointing to his bag. Does it need to be fed? Yeah. Dumbledore agreed that in exchange for a weekly portion of delicacy, it wouldn't smoke the weather creatures in the lake. Did Dumbledore come to an arrangement? Yeah. You know, we didn't want this lake to become dead quickly. No one is strong against giant squid, Neville. And what are you really doing here? I came to get some fresh air. Isn't it too early for a walk? Hagrid chuckled. As a teacher, I should give you detention. I wanted to practice spells, Neville lied. Out here, in isolation. When I do this at school, everyone laughs at me. There was silence. Hagrid looked at Neville, who was shuffling his soggy boots in the dirt. After a moment, the gamekeeper said, I know how it is. I also had problems with witchcraft at school. Yeah. If you want, you can practice at my cottage. There is a lot of space and no one goes there except me. I will pick pumpkins for All Hallows Eve soon, so you will have plenty of room. Yeah. Neville, don't stand here. You will get sick. He grunted and walked away. Neville was left alone and watched from a distance for a while as Hagrid fed the squib from the jetty on the lake. When finished, he waved to Neville and headed towards the cabin. Neville looked at his watch. It was after 7. Time to go back for breakfast. He strolled towards the castle, thinking frantically. He was grateful that Hagrid didn't laugh at him. What's more, he offered his garden as a place to exercise. Hagrid is fine. This encouraged him. He took out his wand and waved at the shoes again, muttering a spell. It seemed to him that the ground around the heel of his left shoe became less moist, which meant that this part of the shoe began to repel water, at least partially. No more self-pity, he thought, and again he recalled an idea, maybe a crazy one, that had been on his mind for a long time. This short walk made the idea not seem completely crazy. Must try, yes. I will try to talk to him. He raised his head and quickened his pace. It's time to go to Filch.